Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Jen and I like to read. I also go by My Favorite Fiction, so that's my handle on my Bookstagram slash threads slash YouTube. So I have not filmed a wrap up in, I believe, 7 months, if I'm correct remembering on the last wrap up video that I posted on my channel. So it is time. We're not going to be going through all the months that I missed. We're not doing that. We're just going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of July. Something interesting that is not very common or like normal for me, I don't own any of the books that I read in July. July is actually the first month that I got a library card, which is so exciting. Or actually maybe it was the end of June, but I did get a library card at my local library and it has changed my reading game. So a lot of the books for this wrap up are actually from the library, which if you're not already a member of your local library, please go sign up. But there are definitely books on here that I do have on my list to pick up when I can find them because I need a trophy. I need a trophy book to place on my shelf if I loved the book. So without further ado, let's start talking about all the books that I read in the month of July. The first book that I read in the month of July is Overgrowth by Mira Grant, and I did get this book from the library. I was so excited to see this on the shelf because this has been an anticipated read for me for this year. I did not realize how chunky this book was. It was pretty chunky. The premise of it is super intriguing. It's very like odd, which is what drew me to this book in the first place. Now I'm gonna read the summary on Fable because I just can't be bothered to use my brain right now and summarize the book. Since she was 3 years old, Anastasia is it Anastasia or Anastasia? Since she was 3 years old, Anastasia Miller has been telling anyone who would listen that she's an alien disguised as a human being and that the armada that left her on Earth is coming for her. Since she was 3 years old, no one has believed her. Now, with an alien signal from the stars being broadcast around the world, humanity is finally starting to realize that it's already been warned and it may be too late. I was so excited to read this book. Oh my gosh, if I haven't said, I gave this book 3.5 stars. So not a 4, not a 5, but still very enjoyable. Personally, I think the book was a little bit too long. I loved this kind of take on aliens and the type of aliens that they are. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to spoil. I think it's really fun to go into this without a ton of information, but I really enjoyed this. Very weird sci-fi horror. Some of the descriptions of like mild body horror in this it got to me a bit. If you're in the market for a new sci-fi thriller horror, I would still recommend to check this one out. The next book that I read is Bloodfire Baby by Irene Carson. I believe that's how you say their name. Unfortunately, this book was a 2.75 star read for me. This is another book that I also got from the library, and I was in the mood for a spooky horror. I wanted something a little bit paranormal. I wanted something eerie. I wanted something that was going to make me uncomfortable. And to be honest, anything around the horror thriller genre of motherhood usually does that for me. That usually creeps me out, but this one unfortunately did let me down. Before the shadow appeared, Sophia thought mothering would be all sun-drenched light and white linen sheets as seen advertised by the momfluencers on Instagram. In her gorgeous home anchored in a posh suburb, far removed from her origins, Sophia revels in her success. Motherhood seems like the natural next step, but when her husband travels for a work trip, leaving Sophia all alone with their unnamed 3-week-old baby, she can't quite square how mothering falls slow. That's a very hard sentence to say. She can't quite square how mothering falls solely in her lap. Got it. Nobody seems able or willing to help her, not her husband, not her best friend, and certainly not the mother she cut off long ago. Her postpartum reality is overtaken by an ominous figure. Sophia realizes she must confront her murky history or risk losing more than just the veneer of perfection. The husband in this? Useless. Absolutely useless. What? The decisions and the things that he said, deeply upsetting. Deeply upsetting. Most horrific thing about this book? The husband.
Oh, there's a big surprise! That's an incredible... I think I'm gonna have a heart attack and die from that surprise!
But yeah, anyways, this book, unfortunately, was a letdown for me. The next book that I read is The Revered and the Pariah, which is the second book, I believe, in the Fae of Allastronia series. Alastriona. I think it's Alastriona. No, this is the third. This is the third book. No, it's the second. Wait. I think it's a second. I actually read this on Kindle Unlimited. I'm just going to kind of talk about all of this bundled together. I read books 3, 4, and 5 on my Kindle. As far as the rating goes, The Revered and the Pariah, 4 stars. I read The Sacred and the Tormented, 3 stars. And then I read The Exalted and the Forgotten, 2.75 stars, which is unfortunate because that is the final book. Now, I didn't really have any high hopes going into the series. I was really in the mood for a fun, spicy romantasy, and this had popped up on Kindle and I figured I would just give it a try. One thing that I will say about this series, if you are looking for a dark romantasy with minimal to nearly no spice, you may actually like this book. I was expecting there to be a lot more spice, but in this book there are a lot of fade to black moments, which was actually a little bit refreshing because a lot of books in the romantasy genre relies heavily on spice sometimes, so it was a little bit refreshing to read a dark romantasy with minimal spice and still get those darker elements in more of that fantasy instead of having to go to a perhaps young adult fantasy book in order to get more of that yearning and less of the spice. Now, the first book in the series is The Divine and the Curse. So I'm going to read the summary of the first book on Fable. When 18-year-old Ariana is stolen from her family and sold into slavery, she spends months disguised as a half-breed fae, struggling against the devastations of a decade-long war. But she's never expected to find herself at the mercy of her country's greatest enemy. General Rion is ruthless and commanding. He relishes in his reputation as the Demon, a vile creature incapable of love or compassion. With a secret no one can know, Ariana strives to placate him while plotting her escape. But sometimes fate has other plans and rumors can't always be trusted. I'm pretty sure I gave the first book a 4-star. The first book was really well done in my opinion, and it left me wanting more. The romance between Ariana and Rion was so good. The pain that each of them has gone through separately before meeting each other is heartbreaking. The next book that I read this? No, I listened to this as an audiobook actually. I had this on Audible before I canceled my Audible subscription. Wow. I have heard so many people talk about this book in the dark romance community, and I am so glad that I finally decided to read this. Insatiable by Leigh Rivers. This is the first book in the Edge of Darkness series, and I did give this 3.5. I do think that if I would have read this physically, it may have been a 4. Now, before I get into the summary of this, remember, this is a dark romance. If you are not into dark romances, you are not going to like this. This book, this series in particular, I would say heavy on the trigger warnings. I personally don't look up trigger warnings. The only time I think I'll ever maybe need to be aware of a trigger is if there's an unnecessary, detailed animal death. I don't want to see that. I don't want to read it. I don't want to hear about it. No, thank you. But again, to each your own, check your trigger warnings. Cade Mitchell is obsessed with someone he despises. A snake in an angel's skin, Stacy Rhodes is everything he can't forget. The girl who shattered his heart and drove him deep into the darkness of the underworld. He watched her for years, killed anyone who came close to her, but now granted a brief moment of freedom from the life he's trapped in, he's back home and driven to claim her again, breaking every rule he's ever made for himself. Not even his hatred can stop the pull between them, but he'll never forgive her. I also read Voracious, which is the second book in this trilogy, and I gave this 3.75 stars. Now, with this story, absolutely gut-wrenching. I remember actually talking to my husband about this book and kind of explaining the plot to him, and he was like, that's like really fucked up. And I was just like, I know, this is absolutely horrific. There is so much miscommunication. There's a lot of trauma between both of our characters, and they are not ready to open themselves up to each other. There was something that had happened in the past that just split them apart, and they're kind of finding their ways back to each other, but it takes time. So if you're expecting things to be resolved within the first book, or even get past some of that miscommunication, that is not happening. That is not happening at all. This is just a really well done dark romance, and I love Leigh Rivers. It's starting to get hot in here. Oh, these lights are getting to me. The next book I read, I also got from the library, and this is You Did Nothing Wrong by C.G. Drews. This is another book that was on my anticipated reading list, and guys, I gave this book 5 stars. This was a perfect horror novel. This was perfect. This one truly had my head spinning until the end of the story. I had so many questions throughout, but I truly could not imagine or pinpoint the plot twist from a mile away. I'm not good at that. Anyways, I'll just say that I am not good at figuring out the plot twist. But this one, there was no way I was gonna get that. Maybe if you read a lot of horror or thrillers, you would have caught on, but for me, this This was a little crazy, but I loved it. Single mother Elodie's life has become a fairy tale. She's met Bren, equal parts golden retriever, devoted, and sinfully handsome. He's whisked her and her autistic son Jude to the crumbling family house he's renovating. She has a new husband, a new house, and a new baby on the way. Everything is perfect. Until Jude claims he can hear voices in the walls. He says their renovations are hurting the house. Even Elodie can't ignore it. Something strange is going on. The question is it with the house or with her son, and what is Elodie hiding? The next book that I read is Turn Off the Light by Jackie Walters, and I gave this 4 stars. I did listen to this on my Libro FM subscription. The story of this is incredibly eerie. It's another haunted house setting. We have a mother in it. Like I said, there is a trend. On the isolated eastern shore of Virginia, Edith is a healer, a woman of knowledge and a woman watched. Shadows move where they shouldn't, whispers creep through the dark. Terrified she has opened her home to the devil, Edith makes a desperate choice. Claire doesn't believe in ghosts until she returns home to care for her dying father and finds her childhood house listening. As one sleepless night bleeds into the next, she becomes convinced something is stirring beneath the floorboards, something that has waited a long time to rise. As the danger mounts, Edith and Claire will discover they need each other to survive, but they are separated by 400 years and time is running out for them both. This book did it so well in kind of planting seeds in the chapters of both Edith and Claire that we are able to kind of slowly make these connections that end up making this book so much more satisfying when you finally get to the end and things are fully revealed. I have actual chills thinking about this book and specific moments where I was like, I knew it! Literally listening, driving in the car and listening to this audiobook and just being like, I knew it.
You didn't know, you didn't know, you didn't freaking know, but I knew.
He knew.
Yes.
But this one was done so well. The next book I read is We Are All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter, and I gave this 3 stars. I listened to this as an audiobook on Libby. The one thing that I will say about this book is that I personally thought it was too long. I think I felt that way a little bit with Pretty Girls as well, but this one I did think was just a little bit too lengthy. As we were going through the middle to end, I was kind of losing steam a little bit. Welcome to North Falls, a small town where everyone knows everyone but nobody knows the truth, until the night of the fireworks when 2 teenage girls vanish and the town ignites. For Officer Emmy Clifton, it's personal. She turned away when her best friend's daughter needed help and now she must bring her home. But as Emmy combs through the puzzle the girls left behind, she realizes she never really knew them. Nobody did. Every teenage girl has secrets, but who would kill for them and what else is the town hiding? This is another book that has some very disturbing and uncomfortable elements as well, very similar to Pretty Girls in that aspect. Overall, it was enjoyable. I do think maybe if I would have read this, I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, but I did, again, give it 3 stars. The next book I did get at my library, and I was so excited to see this on the shelf because I feel like this is a relatively new book. This is the 2nd book in the Threadmender Chronicle series. This is Manor of Decay, and I did give this 4 stars. The first book in the series, which is House of Blight, I believe, I didn't love that book as much as I wanted to. For whatever reason, I just wasn't invested into the story. Maybe it just wasn't the time. Adira is not enjoying retirement. She's traumatized and heartbroken. Oh, I just realized I was reading the summary of the 2nd book. We gotta read the summary of the 1st book. Adira is a threadmender. She holds a rare life-saving power that can cure disease and heal injuries in the blink of an eye. But magic always comes with a cost, and saving anyone sacrifices a sliver of her own life. She's always kept her abilities hidden until the powerful Fernglove family discovers her secret. The Ferngloves are charming and beautiful, possess powerful magic, and don't take no for an answer, especially Orin, the head of these ruling elites. When Adira's brothers unexpectedly contract blight, an incurable virus killing people throughout the town, and an illness too strong for her to heal them both, Orin offers to help. Together at his estate, they'll research a cure while Orin slows their sickness and Adira hones her magic. His kindness and honesty surprise Adira, as does her undeniable attraction to him. Very satisfying ending as well. This is just a duology, so they're all out right now. You could go binge it now. The last book that I read Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher, and I give this 2.75 stars. I read this on my Kindle, so we're not ending on a great note. I was expecting so much more from this. I think T. Kingfisher is a really hit or miss author for me. For a while, I thought that their books were really going to be for me, but I truly think the only book I've read by them that I loved was Swordheart, I think it's called. And I do like the Sworn Soldier series as well, but again, that one is a little bit hit or miss for me in terms of like which books they are. Unfortunately, this one did not do it for me. Also, I didn't realize this is a Snow White retelling. It is so embarrassing to say that I didn't know this until halfway through the story. when I was like, wait a minute. Wait a second. There are characters' names in this. There are certain items or objects or things in here that would directly tell you this is a Snow White retelling, but it completely flew over my head. So I also really do not like fairy tale retellings. That's not something that I enjoy. That's probably something that kind of gave this a lower rating as well, because I just don't like retellings. Healer Anya regularly drinks poison, not to die, but to save, seeking cures for those everyone else has given up on. The summons from the king interrupts her quiet, herb-obsessed life. His daughter Snow, yeah, I didn't catch on to that. The daughter's name is literally Snow. Didn't catch on to that. His daughter Snow is dying, and he hopes Anya's unorthodox methods can save her. Aided by a taciturn guard, a narcissistic cat, and a passion for the scientific method, Anya rushes to treat Snow, but nothing seems to work. That is until she finds a secret world hidden inside a magic mirror. This is literally Snow White. I'm not even kidding. We got I met Snow. We encountered the magic mirror multiple times, and nowhere in my mind did I think this was a Snow White retelling. Nowhere. So embarrassing. That is until she finds a secret world hidden inside a magic mirror. The dark realm may hold the key to what is making Snow sick, or it might be the thing that kills them all. Yeah, I didn't give that book a very high rating. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to comment down below if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts were on them. What books did you read in July? What books do you recommend me to read for the remainder of this year? Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching again, and bye!